Because if there's an infinite number of versions of ourselves who are able to do literally anything that we can imagine, perhaps we can also do everything everywhere all at once. So, maybe it would be more precise to consider this a problem about freedom. Hey movie fans, mi raza! Today we're talking about two films that just hit the theaters, The Flash and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Both of them are comic book franchises, however, they share other similarity. They both talk about the multiverse. And they're not alone. Since the 60s, comic books have played plenty with this idea. But, recently, it has become a constant in pop culture. The Arrowverse in the CW, the Loki series, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And several other examples have plots around the idea of many worlds, of many possibilities, that coexist simultaneously, even if we cannot access them. But how did this concept originate? The multiverse, or the many worlds interpretation, is a hypothesis that branches from theoretical physics. The concept originated in the 1950s, and it was invented by Erwin Schrödinger and Hugh Everett to explain some of the mathematical consequences of quantum mechanics. Some authors have applied the concept to try to solve a famous thought experiment of quantum mechanics, Schrödinger's cat. In this case, there's a cat inside a sealed box that contains a flask of poison, and, when broken, it could mean that the cat is both dead and alive simultaneously because of quantum superposition. Using the multiverse hypothesis, it could mean that there is a universe in which the cat lives and another one in which he dies. But, even though the concept has scientific origins, the fact that it has so much presence in pop culture makes me think that there is an ideological aspect that could help us explain the popularity of this idea. Some weeks ago, a friend of mine suggested that the popularity of the concept was probably due to the fact that people are always in constant search of something new to believe in, something that transcends our reality. I didn't make much of her comment at that point. Now I'm thinking she's probably right. Now let's consider this. According to the Pew Research Center, the center estimates that in 2020, about 64% of Americans, including children, were Christian. People who are religiously unaffiliated, sometimes called religious nuns, accounted for 30% of the US population. Adherents of all other religions, including Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, totaled about 6%. Depending on whether religious switching continues at recent rates, speeds up, or stops entirely, the projections show Christians of all ages shrinking from 64% to between a little more than half, meaning 54%, and just above one-third, which means 35%, of all Americans by 2070. Over that same period, nuns would rise from the current 30% to somewhere between 34% and 52% of the US population. Now, let's not forget that astrology and other forms of superstition have gained more popularity in recent years, expanding through the vast world of social media. What if this decline in religious affiliation goes hand in hand with adopting a new series of superstitions? People want to believe in something, but institutions are losing credibility. However, it is clear that the multiverse hypothesis is a product of serious theoretical work. But what if society believes in this idea consciously or unconsciously, and people decide to live their lives as if it were a fact? All of a sudden, our lives seem freer. Because if there's an infinite number of versions of ourselves who are able to do literally anything that we can imagine, perhaps we can also do everything everywhere all at once. So, maybe it would be more precise to consider this a problem about freedom. In this regard, French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said,
Dostoevsky once wrote, "If God did not exist, everything would be permitted, and that for existentialism is the starting point. Everything is indeed permitted if God does not exist, and man is in consequence forlorn, for he cannot find anything to depend upon, either within or outside himself. He discovers forthwith that he is without excuse, for if indeed existence precedes essence, one will never be able to explain one's action by reference to a given and specific human nature. In other words, there is no determinism. Man is free, man is freedom."
Paradoxically, it is precisely because of this sense of freedom that humans experience anguish, according to the existentialists. This angst refers to a state of fear in the face of freedom. Here is where both of our movies take their respective stand. While Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse portrays freedom as the possibility of modifying the material conditions that surround us, The Flash tries to portray a more tragic approach. Even if an individual is able to fully exercise their freedom by traveling through space and time, there are certain events that cannot be eluded. especially when the subjective experience of others is involved. And the debate about freedom and its relationship with the multiverse is present in both films. Miles Morales, after learning about what Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, calls canon events, which are specific moments in the origin stories of every Spider-Person, tries to go back to his universe to save his dad. Spider-Man 2099 is portrayed as a villain, even though he tries to serve as a multiversal cop that attempts to prevent any collapse of the canon events that could easily mean the implosion of multiple universes. On the other hand, in The Flash, Barry Allen tries to save his mom from a murder that happened years ago, and, in doing so, modifies reality as a whole, creating a new universe that has changed in the past and the future. Opposing the idea proposed by Miles Morales, Barry understands that the freedom he apparently possesses because of his ability of traveling through space and time has limits, particularly when we talk about our freedom conflicting with other people. And it is worth noting that, in this case, the villainous force of the movie is embodied by the young Barry Allen, an alternate version that is unable to let go of other people and tries to modify time perpetually. So, in summary, both movies agree that the multiverse is a metaphor of freedom, but they differ on the limitations that freedom has. Also, this probably explains the popularity of the concept in recent years. The multiverse becomes a fantasy in which we don't have to work a 9-to-5 job, and where we are happy just because of the endless possibilities that the multiverse means to our otherwise ordinary and monotonous lives. Mi raza! I hope you enjoyed this video. Gently tap the like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this. I'm out!